It's Friday. Do you know what your IT pros are? We don't. It's Patch and Switch. And now, two guys who you should trust everything they say about technology, only because they understand the difference between good espresso and bad instant coffee. That's right. It's Pat and Switch. Interesting. My goodness. It is a Friday. I randomly put out this request and said, hey, oh, look at this. He even has a beer. That is perfect. I randomly put out this request and said, hey, we're going to be down a host. And I'm open to guests. We're open to anybody. No offense to Steve, the audio guy, or Pierre, or Jay Shock, or whoever it happens to be. We thought we'd bring some new life into this particular show. And then this random person named Ralph, Ralph Squillace, has said, hey man, I would love to chat with you. And he pinged me on the internal team, so I knew he was legitimate. And so I said, well, hey, let's connect up, let's talk. And then he says, and caps it off the best way he possibly could. And he says, oh, and by the way, I'm going to take the show from my patio in Italy drinking a beer.
That's correct. That's correct.
This is Mr. Ralph. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing okay. Fantastic even, because I made it through a week. It's Friday evening here. It's 6:03 p.m.
Right.
So it's aperitivo time, and I saw the ping, and I was like, I have to chat with Rick and the crew. I've got rants. We're ready to go.
He's got things to say. And so now, so it's just a little bit of a history and a little bit of a background, because again, a lot of the viewers may not have seen you before or heard of you or the things that you do. Ralph and I met probably 8-ish years ago, maybe 8 or 9, back when he was working in documentation. And I was working as a new PM inside the Azure engineering team. And we started to talk and work around things in the VM world. And then he was also very interested in this newer technology that was coming about, that we were talking about, known as containers and Kubernetes and other things, way back when. So we used to argue about VMs versus containers. We used to argue about documentation. He would always win. Like I'll give him that. I'll cede the floor to my compadre over there. But we would always have lively discussions about stuff. And so when he pinged me out of the blue, literally on Twitter, just saying, "Hey man, let's go, let's talk."
So if I tell you that actually VMs are going to end up being victorious, does that like unwind the whole thing?
Feel better? Either way, it's all infrastructure as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter about the scale, level of abstraction, and how flexible you make your environments for different people. Again, most of my background is in the infrastructure and managing of the infrastructure background side of things, not necessarily supporting dev teams. Kubernetes and VMs with monolithic applications, microservices, all that sort of stuff. That all usually applies more so to infrastructure folks and SREs and platform engineers that go off and support dev teams or support software development inside of different companies and things like that.
Kind of like app infrastructure as opposed to the hardware and connection stuff.
Yeah. So that's basically where our paths crossed at Microsoft. And then, as I mentioned, you're now in Italy. You're still working for Microsoft, as far as I know.
I do. I have the same job I had in the United States.
And you're literally joining us with a beer on the patio from a location undisclosed.
I have a second one queued up as well. It's going to be a good bit of time.
In our European data center area. Now, right. just because, again, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen too much involved with the show before. I'm going to kind of lead the conversation where we're going to be going first. First of all, I do want to do a shout out to everybody that has joined us live for the show. So this happens every 2 weeks. We are down a host, as I mentioned. The tall guy with the much better hair aka Joey Snow, is in rehearsals right now for Microsoft Build. And so he is unable to join us. He apologizes, but also laughs and snickers at the same time when he says that. Normally, he does a lot of the coordination with the announcer guy and hands him some ideas for the script for the announcer guy. You could tell today he was a little bit off because, you know, Joey wasn't around to be able to give him some guidance. But we do have a bunch of different viewers that he also greets at the beginning and top of the hour. And like so far inside of our chats, again, Ralph, if you were able to take a look on your laptop, you could see some chat scrolling down on the right hand.
I can see some.
Yeah, so you got Genescu7 is there. Visio MVP from Canada has joined us again. GoGo Gadget 360 has been talking about ZipTies for some reason. Fair Brit joins us from the world of the UK's up further north than where you are.
There's Wired Canuck, who is ready to fight for the users.
You got it, man. Wired Canuck is there, is helping us out in the studio as well. TRP8472 at his post. Thank you very much, sir. Kowski has joined us as well. And as always, we'll be calling out and saying hello to a whole bunch of other folks that are joining us too. I see Shadiest of Pandas has joined us. Soren Fisker. We have some Donk7 and Drapsnat. So a whole bunch of different folks. They come and go throughout the show. So if you please, feel free, interact, go ahead and say some stuff inside the chat. I got my one eye over here on one screen while we're chatting here with Mr. Ralph and others. But that is generally what's going on in the introduction wise and introduction where. And don't forget, all throughout the show, anyone, including you, Ralph, if you wanted to, could go ahead and hit a bang word or exclamation mark word, and then put in one word that represents what the possible next episode could be, if you wanted to. This week's episode, just so you know, Ralph, what you signed up for, this week's episode is called Grommets, ZipTies, HatFactor Authentication. So 3 random words by people throughout the episode. So you don't have to answer now, but think about one at the end of the show. You and I get to basically throw all the votes out for what people vote for. And then we just pick the 3 words that are inside the list. So stay tuned for when we get to that one particular part. Now, when you and I chatted on Microsoft Teams before this call, you were asking for the format of the show, a script of things we should be talking about.
I was asking to see if I was going to offend you in some way.
Well, you know, and as I said, it's a pretty high bar to offend the audience and everybody involved with the show. So it's all fair game to talk about a whole bunch of different sort of stuff. But I mentioned that there are 5 main sections to the show, and the very first one. See if our substitute technician, there we go, from the trenches is the first part of the show where we talk about stuff that we've been doing in our day jobs, working for Microsoft, doing our everyday jobs, if we have any kind of interesting anecdotes or stories. So since it is your first time on the show, I thought I'd let you have the floor and just kind of share, maybe it's a rant, maybe it's a comment, whatever you like, just a little bit of introduction about well, I guess we could start with a bit of introduction for you for what you do, but then we can talk about what you do for your day job.
Sure. So I'm a principal program manager, product manager, because we change those names periodically just for fun at Microsoft.
Nice.
I am working for what used to be called Azure Core. May still be called Azure Core. I'm not really sure, but we do.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. I don't pay too much attention to the names because it's so enjoyable to mix them. My group is the group that builds the core compute infrastructure and access infrastructure for Azure. So that would include, for example, ARM, the resource manager, the API that you use to access everything.
Right.
We also build AKS, the big Kubernetes service that we love to have people use. But we also build things like any kind of compute infrastructure. So, for example, our team also runs Azure Container Instances, ACI. So that's if you want to run a container just standalone.
Are those still around? I didn't know
they are indeed.
Around.
Oh,
wow.
Absolutely. In fact, we're doing really cool things internally with that.
So to kind of peel back the layers, the Azure Container Instance, that's literally just a single container that's being run almost like a PaaS underneath.
As a PaaS.
You throw a container on, you throw one container on top of it.
Yep.
And that's it.
You just say, hey, pull this image.
Yeah.
Here are my parameters. Make it happen, and it can run for a
Okay.
long time, or it can run for a short time. It's
It's
entirely up
like
to you.
it's like the little baby brother of
When
AKS.
I met you, I was helping create the first container service on Azure,
Mhm.
which was called Docker extension. And it was, you could get a VM
Mhm.
with Docker already installed, and you could literally do the ACI stuff, right? Like
Okay.
you just run whatever number of containers you want. And that was before they created Ross Gardler, who runs the Linux VM stuff in Azure Core, had created a container service, but he had this
It was
idea that
ACR, wasn't it?
ACS, Azure Container Services.
Oh, ACS.
And that was one of 3 orchestrators, some of which have we forgotten. One of which was Kubernetes, but the other one was Docker Swarm, and the other one was something called DCOS, which was a Mesos-based
I remember the
orchestrator for
Mesosphere piece.
VMs.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going back
And
in ancient history, my friend. This is
yeah,
hilarious.
but now all of that, the Docker service kind of migrated to ACI, so you could just run them whenever you wanted and
Right.
get Windows hypervisor protection over there for your containers. So that's very, very good. And then AKS is the sort of the service we centralized on, because it seemed to be the thing that most people wanted to use. I call Kubernetes the JavaScript of orchestrators.
Nice.
You may not have wanted to build it that way. You may not like it, but it works and you could use it. All right.
So just out of curiosity, just to kind of again level this appropriately. All these different services that we're talking about runs on top of what we internally, and then we talk about this externally too, is the fabric that is all of the stuff that is Azure across all of our regions, all of our data centers across the board. So
that's right.
When a particular service becomes available in one of the new regions that spins up, that means that all the infrastructure pieces required to run that particular service, all those services and the background stuff that we manage, that gets lit up in a new region on top of this base layer of fabric that is the Azure world.
I could tell you if you want to talk about like a story about how the operations work. So one of the things I do now, which you're going to give me a bunch of crap for, I know you are, is that so when you and I were first talking, we were talking about the difference between VMs and containers, and I was involved in the container stuff, and you were like, containers, yeah, I get it, but a VM is the essence of compute kind of thing. We were playing with that kind of fight, which is still true. There's still differences between these technologies, and that's important to remember. And when you're engineers and your IT pros, you do pay attention to the details. That's important. But now I'm like, I really want a cloud native binary. So a lot of the stuff I do, I am the Microsoft board member for the Bytecode Alliance Foundation, which is developing for the W3C specifications for WebAssembly components.
Okay.
Of all things. Now, I'm not going to rant about that because that's going gangbusters, and I have a great time, and it won't show up for a while. It's a big investment in ecosystem. But as part of that, we run those in AKS. Now, here's the operational part, and especially the Azure part. So we built something called, you can search for it, it's called the AKS WASI Node Pool Preview. Now, the critical thing is not what it does. I don't care whether you're interested in WebAssembly in AKS or not. But to do that, we needed to bake an image. So when AKS deploys a cluster, they pull an immutable image, in this case, a VM image, that we baked and tested and approved at Azure, running through all the security tests, all the fuzzing, all the whole ball of wax, and signed the whole thing, right? And then they pull that VM image on the nodes and create a VM, what do they call them? Scale set. I forgot the name, right? So which is just a chunk of homogeneous nodes that are wrapped up in a ball. So AKS creates those, and everything for AKS, the cluster, all the bits are already on the node because it was just laid in as a VM. Right. That baking process to add my WebAssembly doohickey, we'll call it a doohickey for today.
I love it.
So to add my WebAssembly doohickey that everybody wants to use, right, in AKS, we had to bake that image, and it took about a week to bake correctly. And then we go ahead and put it in the SKU to roll out around all these regions and all these data centers that you mentioned. And it took, depending, there's a queue of all the rollouts around the world. And it took about, the average rollout is about 2 weeks for that image to be available in all the regions, in all the zones, in all the world.
So that's 60 plus regions, and then it has to also go to each of the different zones inside the regions as well.
Yep.
And again, to kind of,
and
in case just for folks who are not aware of the scope of the concept of the zones, think of it as taking a region and splitting it up into 3 physical different locations, extracted or extended by kilometers of space, so that if one particular zone goes down, the rest of the region will continue to function because you've got more happens to be there. Part of redundancy.
Yep. You just got another rack.
The complexity for deployment.
And it's that rack is not plugged into the same outlet.
Yeah.
It doesn't use the same cooling as the other racks.
Just in case someone kicks on and turns on their under desk like heater for their feet.
You got to think of like, so have you ever
know.
seen like like a Costco or Walmart, like, container store, like the big store with metal grating and stuff. Okay, it's like that, only there's 3 of them, and that way Rick can't kick the plug out of one of those buildings.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make it personal.
Right? My last name is synonymous with the Sev 1 incident, so applause.
You and me both.
Yes.
So I love this. So the rollout of this thing is really fantastic because you're also behind a train of other rollouts. So people are adding features all the time, which means new baked images all the time, which means new baked images getting rolled out all the time. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a 2-week rollout, that means you're behind other rollouts that are occurring right away. And your rollout cannot complete unless the previous rollout succeeds. And so and all the rollouts can be held up if a prior rollout has problems for whatever reason. Okay. And that's for reliability and consistency in the whole thing around the entire world. Fantastic system. Works really well. But it's amazing to watch. They've got like a dashboard where you just watch all the rollouts pop into a region, and you're like, oh, great. Only 102 more regions to go for my stuff. It's really fun. So there you go. I have one other story. If we're still in the section.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time, man.
All right. Because I don't want to rant out of section, right? Like that would be wrong.
This is only work-related stuff. There's only
work-related stuff. You got it. So another thing that's happening is, of course, over the last 2 years in particular, right? Not just because of recent news that, that's going on both with Microsoft, but it's happened, in fact, all over. People are paying extremely close attention to supply chain security.
Yeah.
And in the, in serious hardware infrastructure, when you're building a data center, for example, that's all about where is the provenance of all your hardware. All the physical things that are coming in, they have to be exactly the right things, right? And in software, it's exactly the same thing. And the governments are beginning to write expectations for working with governments. And that's actually a good thing for everybody. Because one of the things that happened with open source is all this, you get stuff for free. So you can just build it.
Yep.
But if you just grab something and build it, it's not immediately clear what's in it, and so forth. So that process of doing remedial work, what we used to call tech debt, and we still do when we're fun and we have a beer,
nice,
is something that's been going on for quite a bit. Now, here's the thing that I've been dealing with. So all of the major cloud vendors have Kubernetes services, and Kubernetes, of course, is an orchestrator that is a process that just grabs containers and figures out how to run them on VMs. That's literally what it is, if you're not familiar with it. Those containers are essentially being pulled from Docker Hub, but also from any public repo anywhere.
Yeah.
And it was so easy to do because it's like pulling VHDs from somewhere, right? Like imagine if we had built a Docker or Kubernetes with VHDs, where VHDs were really small, right? Like a unikernel VHDs. And we could actually do this right now, because OCI would do VHD. In fact, we should do this. This would be fun. Anyway, you could build an orchestration system where every process wasn't actually a VHD, but a unikernel VHD plus whatever application it was, was support. and you pull it in, and you just get it running, and then you wire it up and get the networking so that the incoming request gets routed to it and so forth. That's all great, but whether it's that or whether it's container image, the problem is you don't know where that image came from in the open source world.
Right.
And we're
Because it's
only
coming
now
from an open repository that anyone could
correct.
have that thing published, and
correct.
they could have done all sorts of malicious things inside of there, and you wouldn't know unless, of course, you reviewed it.
And so one of the most amazing things at work, this is the work thing. Okay, a lot of background. It's amazing to go talk to a customer that runs critical United States, North American, in fact, world infrastructure pieces. And they're pulling stuff from Docker Hub and running it.
Ouch. Okay.
And our job, right, because of course we have to help people get better and do better things. Our job, so we built a whole service called Azure Container Registry. It's called Artifact Cache.
Yeah.
And it's basically a thing where you say,
hey, it's your private repo of containers that your organization can contribute towards, right?
Podman Hub, somebody says here. Yeah. And it's so like you just get to say, listen, I'm going to point at Python and Docker 3.10, whatever it is, right? You know, pick some image. And I want you to pull that in here to my private registry that I control and that I can test against, and then I can quarantine, and then I can run all kinds of things against, and then sign it for as good for deployment or development. And then my team can use it, right? And I can't tell you how hard it is. Amazon has one of these. Google has one of these, right? There are third-party ones like JFrog and stuff like this has one. VMware has Artifact. No, that's JFrog. VMware has Harbor. Like you have all kinds of these caches that are available to you. And in Azure, we have this service. And it's amazing how people go, oh.
Maybe I should think about this a bit more.
I should be paying attention.
It's a matter of changing the behavior of not putting, well, first of all, not putting restrictions and slowing down or encumbering the development process so that you can still, you know, build fast, fail fast, learn, and advise and change. But at the same time, having some level of control and verification, as you mentioned, of the quality of what happens to be inside those particular containers that are out there.
Yeah. And even it has an operational impact, which you'll appreciate very well. So there's a couple of questions here. It's JFrog has a project, open source, but they also sell an enterprise business version. It's called Artifactory. And so lots of people use Artifactory as it's installable locally, and you can get support for it and so forth. So that's very common. The VMware one, I think it was from Pivotal originally, but I'm not really sure. I can't remember. It's called Harbor. Both of them are OCI compliant registries, but you can host them standalone instead of having a service. And in Azure, that's Azure Container Registry.
Nice. We've also got Janice Q7 there is flexing a little bit and talking about Podman Hub, Patchpad, SwitchPot hubs. If we had Gregor, who is not online today because he is traveling from the UK to the lovely sunny Seattle for a build this weekend, he would be all over this conversation and jumping in there. Because he's very much a containers and Kubernetes administrator side of things on the SRE world. So he's made that pivot and that jump over to managing and working with containers and
the
Kubernetes.
Thing that you and I used to quibble about, and that I think now we live really, is that the skills that IT professionals had building physical data centers, making stuff work, are the same skills, structurally speaking and intellectually speaking. They're the same skills that we use in software to do software IT as opposed to hardware IT, and opposed to racks and wires and so forth. Those things are still absolutely applicable. And so the interesting thing is that the people who deal with the rollouts, the people who deal with managing things like the engineering team at ACR, for example, managing all the rules that have to do with this and that and authentication, things like this. These are hardware rules, ultimately. It's amazing how the skills transferred. And so I think those skills that you and people like you had, those are still the foundational skills for software information management as well. Like we were talking earlier about like application IT as opposed to, data center IT and so forth.
Right.
Actually, they're the same, just applied with different metaphors and different tools. And fundamentally, the hardware skills are the ones that matter.
And that brings an interesting pivot to this conversation, just because in an earlier show ages ago, we were talking about just even the scarcity of places where you can go and learn some of these skills. And us old dudes and old folks getting older with beards and grayness and that sort of stuff. At least you have hair. I have none. That's why I still wear the hat. It's getting harder and harder to be able to go off and to find people that can learn, or resources people can use to learn these things.
Oh, and that's ironic.
And then, as you mentioned, pivot it or translate it so that it applies both in the old world, where they're mostly still working, but then also in the new world, to be prepared for both sides of where that coin happens to be.
And so the weirdest thing is the translation in the work that I was doing from VMs to containers, and now I'm dealing with WebAssembly. One of the things that I had to do with WebAssembly is figure out how can we protect WebAssembly runtimes, not the WebAssembly itself. WebAssembly comes with a sandbox mechanism, right? Like it's protected. Okay, fine. But the problem is the sandbox implementation, think .NET or Java or whatever, that implementation could have bugs in it. So even though the sandbox mathematics, the mathematics of the sandbox are essentially perfect, the implementation was created by humans. Perfection is not necessarily our strong point. Even though we're professionals, we try our best. So we had to end up, and this is going to go somewhere, trust me.
Okay. I'll give
I have a point. My point, and I do have one, is we're going to get, okay, Wired Canuck just got me.
Yeah.
My point is that in order to protect against exploitation in Azure, for Azure infrastructure, my team had to build a brand new hypervisor VM manager that could operate a VM, a bare metal VM, without any devices, no file system, no network, and run WebAssembly module inside. And we had to do it, be able to create that VM in less, excuse me, now the beer's getting to me, in less than 700 microseconds, not milliseconds, microseconds. And we did it. So we have a project that it does this for Azure infrastructure. Okay, but what are we doing? We're back to VMs.
Yeah.
My friend, we're in VM land.
Oh man, that is
so
hilarious.
VMs win.
It's
10 years later.
And it's the way I look at it, it's all just abstraction to be able to make things work more efficiently in the hardware that we happen to have, whatever that hardware happens to be. It's all.
So that's the container rant. No,
it's good. That's good. I'm gonna
use your cache, friends. Do not pull from the internet. The other reason is because, of course, the internet goes down.
Yeah.
If you're in Azure, you're going to get that image right away. It's amazing. Just use the cache.
Use the cache. Make it there. Use trusted sources. At least vet them and then make them your own. Make it so that you have a known source for where they come from, and then they're secured and locked up inside of your own subscription. So all the goodness happens to be there. I'm gonna randomly just go through and just double check here and shout out to some friends that have joined us here. KMC Farron, I already said hello to Kowski is there. Mark Zink is here too. We've got, well, I said hi to Soren Fisker, I think. I forget if I did or not, but hey, no offense. I do not intend to slight you in any way. Glad that you're joining us here. We've got our special friend, Ralph Squillace, joining us from Italy with a beer. And it's actually fitting only because, well, I'm not even going to bother sharing a story for what I'm going to be doing from the trenches story this week, just because it is that time of year where Build Conference is happening. It's the springtime of May, which in Microsoft speak, what that means is it's performance reviews, it's connects, it is reference letters, it is all sorts of boring managerial overhead and crap like that. So, Ralph, I hope that you have your connect done and you're all set to go.
I got it done early, Rick, just to torture you.
Nice. Thank you very much. So that's all going on right now. We got a bunch of folks that are flying in over the weekend to get ready for Microsoft Build. There's this secret little event that people are talking about already taking place on Monday, specific to Surface type things. I have no other details other than that. And that's
look,
happening.
Another random IT guy said exactly the same thing. He has the same rant.
Nice. So that's taking place on Monday, but then Build actually kicks off at build.microsoft.com on Tuesday. Tune in for the lovely announcements that are happening there. Cool stuff. And if you are in town, I will mention for the people that are joining us, Mary Jo, Paul Thurrott, a whole bunch of folks, and I even threw the Bastion Switch hat in there too. We're all going to be going off to a tavern for a beer on Tuesday night at 6 p.m.
FOMO.
So it'll be a nice meetup, hanging out, chatting, all that sort of fun stuff. That's taking place on Tuesday. DJ Eddie is coming in on Sunday. Good to see you, my friend. We're overdue for a one-on-one and a chat, so we'll be talking there. The second piece, or the second section of the show, is called Beer Money. Do you know what beer money is, Ralph? What would be your guess?
No idea.
Beer money is what you get paid when you help your friends, family, your second cousin twice removed at holiday season with anything to do with IT in any way, shape, or form. Random people on the street that find out that you work for Microsoft and they understand that you do more than just sell Windows. All that sort of stuff. That is known as beer money work. And so it can't be work related, but it has to be some kind of thing that you've done to help support the greater ethos of IT with non-technical folks. You have an interesting story, not necessarily a rant, but a story that you can share in the last little while.
No, I think the first 15 minutes was a beautiful purging for me. Thank you.
You're in a happier space now.
And I'm thrilled that I hit the button with a couple people here.
Nice.
No, in fact, well, first of all, vacations are all about collecting beer money for helping people with technology. That goes without saying. Strangely, so I am in southern Italy. For people who don't know, because that's pretty much everybody. My parents passed away. My daughter's in grad school, so my wife happens to be Italian, and so her family is my family now. So that's why I'm here. I moved so that I could continue living with my family, and they're just lovely people. So that's why I'm here.
You used to be an original Seattleite, are you not?
I was born and raised in Seattle. Born and raised in Edmonds, Washington.
Nice.
Went to the University of Washington, did my PhD stuff at Berkeley, and then came back to Seattle and got sucked into the giant vacuum cleaner of Microsoft. 1993.
Woo.
Just before, so this is where the gray hair comes from. And then I quit because we were bad in 2003, and then hired back because we were good.
Nice.
In 2005. So I've been in FDA since 2005, completely remote that whole time. I was one of the first 2 people remote in the Windows division back in those years. Okay, so here's the deal. Here in southern Italy, people use Windows in particular, but they just bought it because somebody sold it to them, and that's how it runs the business and stuff. And so people have Windows like Windows. I haven't seen Windows 95, but I have seen Windows 2000 Professional.
Oh, wow.
Running business. So
wow. 2000.
Yeah, really amazing stuff. So
I don't see that too much in the small business consumer space anymore.
Right. So somebody in this town, it's about 18,000 people. It's a little teeny town, primarily agricultural, olives and cherries and stuff like this. And somebody in this town heard that I had moved in with the family, right? The family news circle travels. And so they asked me to come and talk to them about AI at the local high school.
Ooh.
And I had the opportunity to go in. And my Italian is not very good, but it exists, so I could stumble through.
Right.
So I tried it, and you couldn't believe. Afterwards, people came up and they were like, Windows Phone was the best phone ever. I still have my Nokia. Can you make it work? And then there was a kicker, and you're going to love this. Hey, if I bring my Zune to you, can you get the music off it? Not kidding. So,
this was in the high school?
Yeah.
Wow. That is.
I have a feeling that his dad put him up to it.
Okay. I mean, I've packed away still.
The answer is yes, by the way.
Since I moved. I have not unpacked since I moved, but I do have a device graveyard. I have a number of those types of devices. That
You know, Hanselman figured out how to get the SDK updated and it's all available online. So that's still resuscitatable, and I'm actually going to help the guy do it.
Nice. Well, I know that there's definitely some I think it's like a host file hack that you have to do to be able to point it to a different service to be able to have any kind of updater of transferring files.
You have dabbled in Hanselman, my friend. I can tell.
Nice. Oh, look at that. Frank has joined us. Bouchereau has joined us here. Good to see you, Frank. Good to see you again, coming from the northern hemisphere of North America. Wow, man. So beer money wise, helping out with ancient hardware, Windows devices, Windows Phone devices.
Through the local high schools.
At the high school is even there. Like,
I am currently dodging. Okay, so here's another beer money thing.
Oh, yeah?
So Italy was the largest purchaser of Windows phones in Europe.
Oh.
14 out the high watermark, 14% of all Windows phones in Europe were sold in Italy.
Wow.
And so what happens here is I can go to a store, whatever, and the guy takes out his Nokia and says, hey, okay, bye. And it's all I can do to not start crying.
Wow. That is great.
I know. It's wonderful. I love it.
I love it. Oh my goodness. Well, on beer money here wise, in my world,
what do you got?
Well, for me, it's been, again, that you can see from the shambles of the room that I have going on right now. This is me procrastinating and being too busy to finish unpacking, because I moved from Redmond wise, so basically Redmond proper, to the outskirts of Redmond in a small little tiny town known as Duval.
Oh, it's Duval. Sure.
I moved out further to the country, basically. I still have fiber internet, still have ZipTies fiber, 2 gig up and down.
Right. The charming little farming town is not so charming little farming town anymore.
No, it's definitely growing and very quickly. This week was the finishing of the install of my solar panels on the roof, which I've managed to put in with obviously a contractor, not me actually doing it. And they're trying to provision I have a ginormous wall battery that's the storage of the power as well, besides just generating it with the solar panels. That unfortunately was spec'd out to be a Tesla wall product, or Tesla Powerwall. So I'm not very happy about that personally, but it's there. But it's not provisioned as of yet, because it still has to be provisioned and inspected by a couple of different agencies and closing of permits and crap like that before they can turn the damn thing on. So, I'm like, well, look, there's a QR code on the outside of this box. I wonder what happens if I scan it with my phone.
Wired Connect is onto something.
I was able to scan it, and it actually connected me to the Wi-Fi on the device of the local access point that it uses for configuration. Figured out how to get the software install on my phone, and then there's another QR code on the side that you scan on that one, and then it kicks off the install process. Everything's looking great.
The device came with 2 separate QR codes?
2 separate one on the inside behind the security panel is bolted to the thing, and then one on the outside, which is accessible. Unfortunately, they have upgraded, or maybe it's fortunate for me, they have upgraded the security on the system so that there is some kind of a safety switch software-wise that needs to be flipped by the installer that says this has passed all the inspections correctly. Continue with the install process. So
here's some forced.
Nice. We'll get to that on the next section that's coming up.
All right.
So basically, I was blocked and unable to continue with being able to go and configure and play around with that wall device. So I have to wait. So it's kind of a failed, but safety block.
But how long do you have to wait, do you think?
Well, see, now it's in the hands of the electric company. So it has passed inspection with the electrical union and with the contractor that did the install. It's now waiting on the city has already done their drive-by. Yeah, it looks good. And then just keep on going. And then now we're waiting for the electrical company called Puget Sound Energy to come and meander in open some stuff, look at
When they're
things, and then say,
when
yeah, it's good.
after
But
coffee
yeah,
sometimes.
after coffee or whatever it is, 6 people before they
Okay.
can actually come. But
All right.
that could be anywhere from 3 business days to 21 business days
Sure.
from when they're notified.
The standard period that they
No
give
idea.
you.
No
Yeah.
idea how it's going to go. Besides that, I have
Yeah.
been also working on processing some of these boxes around the house that are in specific areas, because I've been trying to build up my server rack that I have downstairs that has some miscellaneous hardware in there, because I'm due to finish off the what?
Continue. I got a story.
Okay, so basically, it's a very small rack that I picked up online from a used environment, and I've got an Azure Stack HCI box, 2 nodes that's going to be fired up inside of that puppy, and I'm just waiting for the last couple of pieces to arrive to be able to finish commissioning and powering that guy up. Mr. Squatcha, you have a story. You said another one.
I have a story. Okay, so
did you have an infrastructure and a server rack in Italy?
Infrastructure. Oh, so okay. No, you have no idea. Okay, you made me too excited. Okay, here's the deal. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, one of the big things crap. When I'm drinking beer, I have to rewind back quite a bit. Here we go. So the path from data center through hyperscale, which is world straddling data center, and then back out, we have to realize that was the path that was paved by dumping money into electricity production.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like we would have done it if it was us, but it turns out that when you do that with world straddling amounts of capital, you can seriously construct and suck electricity like you can't believe into these data centers. Now, we're all aware of that. You don't have to be unduly concerned about global warming to realize this is an unsustainable path. And so the question now becomes, at a very large level, how do you begin to build this compute and begin to reduce the consumption of electricity, right? And that is a very clear focus, because there's not enough money, nor is there enough ability to produce electricity without directly heating the world or malforming the social structure of the world as we go forward. That's how big this industrial movement was. Okay. Now, so for me, when I moved from containers, like I mentioned, this WebAssembly thing, again, ignore it. Don't be big. But one of the reasons is because it's extremely small cloud native binaries. And so compared to containers, compared to VMs, there's much less transmission of information. Compute is much more efficient and focused and so forth. And it's portable, so you can take advantage of new architectures that consume less energy, particularly ARM, RISC-V, and there's going to be a whole bunch of new architectures coming down the pike, because fabs now can essentially take orders. So the point here is that the design is what is interesting here. The fabs are just commodity stamping of chips.
Right.
So more or less, there's a lot more that goes into it. The critical thing here is that I've been getting into this thing. You can search for it. It's called junkyard computing. And this is totally for you. So take your server rack. What a bunch of professors down at UCSD, San Diego, University of California, San Diego did, is they went and bought a bunch of used phones, which is why I have 6 Windows phones. Don't ask me again. So I also have a whole bunch of, I got about 25 phones. I got the Linux phone, I got the Fairphone, I got the Librem, I got the Pine phone, I got the Pine Tab, I got the Pine Book.
He's got more phones than like Anthony Bartolo has phones.
So I totally do. And I got a little rack for them. And I got a little rack. So each phone is, so think of it like a pie rack.
Yeah,
those little plexiglass pie racks. So I got one of those, and then I've crammed the phones into them. Okay. And I'm not really there. But so anyway, look up junkyard computing. There's an ACM paper from these UCSD guys. And the cool thing is that once they rank it for unit of compute, unit of throughput per watt consumed, they discovered that essentially recycled phone clusters can do higher performance than the bottom 10 sized AWS VMs.
Wow.
That's
Recycled phone clusters.
I'm not kidding. I'm going to get you the link. Where is this? In fact, in Teams, I'm going to give you the paper, and then you're going to.
Oh no, there we go. We've got our on the ball support engineer.
There it is.
Has brought up the paper and brought up the URL. I want to throw that URL inside the bottom of the screen there too, my friend. Possibly.
There you go.
There we go. Copy and paste.
Okay, so this is like.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
There you go. Wired Canucks is already on it.
Yeah.
This is the interesting thing is it's a gimmick, right? Like you're using recycled phones to build clusters and this kind of thing. But it's not a gimmick because these phones are. I was talking to the HoloLens guy, the person who was running the HoloLens program at Microsoft, because we were doing the WebAssembly thing about which you care nothing at all, right? Okay, so we were talking about that, and he goes, "Okay, so here's the HoloLens, and you're a 14-year-old kid, and you're driving the back of your car, and you've got your HoloLens, you're going to play your game, and so what you've got strapped to your face is half of a cell phone, strapped to your face." And I was like, "Oh God, I love that." HoloLens is half a cell phone strapped to your face. I love that. So they took these half a cell phone strapped to your faces, and they can build better compute per unit of electricity than the bottom chunk of major hyperscaler VM SKUs. That's amazing, and it means that the future of data center and IT is actually going to be moving again.
Nice.
I think
that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And there's articles all around talking obviously about the major changes over into the ARM world for servers and reduced power and stuff like that. But then the increased power consumption working with obviously with all of our GPU clusters and NPU clusters and things like that.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. So there's another company. Okay, so when we think about hardware, let's think about hardware. So Microsoft, Amazon, and Google are all building their own ARM chips. Okay, they've already announced that. All of us have announced that, and that's only us. AMD is busy focusing on some sort of GPU, NPU kind of chip set that can undercut CUDA, right? Like it won't be necessarily as great, but it'll be like cheaper and faster and the whole thing, right? Okay. There are any number of places that are already sitting there going, no, FGPUs are all we need, these programmable FPGAs. The acronyms drive me nuts, but the programmable, they're the chips that you can program the gates. The interesting thing is because of this electricity crunch and because of the chip crunch, I heard somewhere in some professional conversation, which you can't quote me on, because I would never say it in public, but they were quoting something like 30 or 40 grand per GPU from NVIDIA kind of thing. And that's not an Azure thing, but it was somebody else. So hearsay.
It all depends on bulk discounts that whoever happens.
That's exactly right. So the point here is that at that price, there is going to be an explosion in hardware because people are going to want to go and tap some of that business revenue and get into that market. They're not going to cede that market to NVIDIA. And so over the next 10 years, but in particular over the next 5, we're going to see a huge explosion in new hardware and new hardware deployments for people who are trying to save money. And so that's fantastic on the hardware side. It's also fantastic on the data center side. It's also fantastic on the software side. There's going to be a huge explosion of that stuff. And junkyard computing is merely sort of one inflection of fun on that.
So I'm just going to do a time check here. We got about 10 minutes left in the show. I just want to remind folks that if you go to patchandswitch.showbot.tv, you are able to go ahead and start your voting on what the next 3 words that are WorkSafe words can be used for the next episode that we're up there and going. And we're going to jump over to that in just a minute, but don't forget, you can go to patchandswitch.showbot.tv and go ahead for the vote for the ones that you want. And if you still want to get one in there, you're more than welcome to. ! Word, and then add in the word that you want to add in as a possibility to the show. Now, I do want to ask you, we're going to have to keep this one relatively short, but you are the only one actually consuming a beverage of an adult nature, Ralph. And so
it's 6:51 p.m. I'm okay.
Yeah, no. It's the next one's called Beer Talk. So it's beer that you had recently. And so
Ooh.
for you recently is the beer that you got in your hand.
Yeah.
But you know, like what
Okay,
can
so
you
this
tell us
is
about the beer? What can you tell us
right.
about the brewery? Because I'll be honest, my experience with beer in Milan has not been great. There is a small spot on one of the canals that I went to with you, I
Oh.
think, that actually has craft beer on tap, and it's this hole
Ai
in the wall.
Navi. On the
Very, very nice.
Navi.
But
Yes.
uh, but
Okay,
uh, but
so
what do you have? What do you got for us?
well, I'm trying to figure out where the hell this comes from. And of course these glasses are no, it's German in language, but it doesn't feel German in production.
Hmm.
It's forced. Okay, it's forced. Somebody look this up. But anyway,
FORS. Yeah.
somebody bought it in bulk. It is not. This is Budweiser kind of thing, but it's better than Budweiser. Okay, this is not like it's not as good as Molson, for example.
It still has to
Just
adhere
saying.
to the German Purity Act of
Right, right,
1667.
right. So it is better than that. Now, beer wise, Italy has two cultures of beer. One is the kind of the high the Budweiser of yore kind of thing, which would be Moretti, or there's one other one,
I
which
think
I forget.
I'm familiar with the Moretti's for sure.
Okay, so that kind of stuff is just it's Budweiser, like
Yeah.
it's
Bulk
just
produced, it does the job.
industrial stuff. Yeah, it does the job on a hot day, and there are a few. But in the north of Italy, and Milan should have been a place, and if I led you astray, you get to punish me next time. North of Italy is right up against the Swiss, Austrian, German mountains and the mountains
Right.
of France, and they have a strong brewing tradition that is extremely rich. And so, if you go up there, the local beers are fantastic. They really are. They follow right along the German tradition and the Austrian tradition, and so they're really fantastic. But here's a quick one for you. There is a beer in Sicily, which is exported. If you go to a good place, it's called Ichnusa, ICHNUSA. And these incredibly agile people will undoubtedly look it up.
Nice.
Have a shot. It's a Sicilian beer.
Yeah.
And it's really pretty good for an exported bottled beer. Now, that's one thing. Now, what's going on here is that in central and southern Italy, there are so many wineries, and they've been doing distillation locally. Like even the family here, my wife's family,
Yeah.
they have, God, we got grapes. I guess we'll make some wine. And Jesus, compared to Californian wines, which I spent a good chunk of my time in San Francisco, they're just like their table wine is amazing, and I'm like, you people could make $1 million. They're like, I just made this in an hour. Would you shut up? We got to get to the pasta. So here, all the vineyards go and do beer also just for fun.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Because they can.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
understand
it's
the
the
whole
same equipment.
yeah, same equipment, kind of same processes. And so locally in central and southern Italy, every town has a beer. So about 10 kilometers away from me, there's a town called Trigionello. And they have a beer festival, and it rocks.
Wow. So when is the beer festival?
Oh,
What
that's
time
a
of
good
year?
question. Hold on.
I'm going to
Let me
have
look
to
it up.
book some time to come out and visit you to be able to try that
Oh,
out.
please. Got a place for you to stay.
And we have one, while you're looking that up, we have one more segment and time for one more possible small story.
Okay.
It is a very quick one. We ended up in the show, and it's called random spending. So basically, what is something that you've random spent on? And it has to be related to technology in some way, shape, or form, geek technology, or whatever happens to be. Have you had any random spending activities recently?
Random spending activities.
Like, have you had to buy a power adapter to go off and power something? Are you exploring some new security devices or IoT devices to manage the vineyard, or provide cell phone coverage inside of your house?
We're doing a bunch of that kind of funky stuff. So I was talking with you before. One of the things we had to do, so we had a house here that's made of stone, and so like the one thing that southern Italy has a lot of is limestone. Used to be underwater, a lot of pressure, water goes away, all of a sudden you got limestone. So, and a lot of marble, right? Same kind of process. So everything here is made of these limestone. It's all big, it's all heavy. So when you go to remodel a house and you want internet, Guess what you're going to do to wire that house? You got big, right, stone drills to drill these huge tubes through these rocks and wire the Cat 5. Now that's
Nice.
absolutely correct. So we had to do that. But one of the tricks is they don't have fiber everywhere. So right now we're actually on an ADSL line through the telephone. So if there was a lightning strike, I'd go out.
Right.
No problem. So I got like 17 down, maybe 10 up. That's about it. But it works fine for what we're doing. Great. Fantastic. But at my house, like I'm working for Microsoft, I actually have to have symmetrical. I have to have a bunch of the ability to push big things and so forth. Okay. To do this, I had to purchase a 5G Yagi antenna.
Oh, yeah?
To point at the one 5G tower, which is about 10 miles away, right? 16 kilometers away on a hill on the top of my house. And we had to drill a pipe straight down through the middle of the retaining wall to pop out the end of the antenna thing to put into the hub, which is a router. It's a 5G router. So there's a SIM chip in it, right? And then we wire the house from that.
Wow.
And that's what I purchased.
Well, that is definitely an interesting way to be able to get your internet into the house and also grab it off of the 5G wires that are 10 kilometers away. I understand kilometers because I was not raised and born inside the freedom units world, so I understand the kilometers reference quite well.
I'm from Seattle, so I think of Canadians as Seattleites.
You got it. That works. Well, we're gonna switch over to the voting wall and take a look at what the work-safe words are.
Make it happen.
The voting wall is what the next episode is going to be called. And of course, I've got to move my thing over here so I can see it. Coming in at the very top at 3 number votes is Joeyless. We got Zune in 2024. We got Patch and Switch Pod, IQ, Junkyard Computing, Yagi Azure Core, Who is Frank, and a bunch of others that are coming in there. You know what? I'm going to let you. We don't necessarily have to go with the votes. We can go with our guest. So what would you say if you were going to pick one word from this particular list? What would it be, my friend?
Oh, that's hard. I would say it's between Zune in 2024 and Junkyard Computing.
Okay, well, you know what? How about we do Zune in 2024 and we'll do IT Purge. I like that one. That's down on the list from Wired Canuck.
All right.
And what's he doing?
On?
What's he doing? He's picked different people. Like maybe he's choosing it. Well, he's choosing it as being Joeyless, Zune in 2024, Patch and Switch Pod. What are you doing? He has no idea what he's doing.
He's muted.
He's muted. Can't even hear him. He doesn't see. This is the audio guy. He doesn't even know how to unmute himself.
I said, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Respect.
Well,
power on.
Okay. Someone take a note. There is Junkyard Computing for sure. Zune in 2024 for sure. Those are the two from Mr. Ralph. Those two. And then I'm going to throw in the IT Purge. So we'll figure out. Hopefully he doesn't clear it all of a sudden and they disappear. Whatever. He can figure that sort of stuff out.
What was
now he has to go.
The first one?
Wait, you got to unfreeze.
Junkyard Computing.
Okay.
You got it? Okay, good. See it?
He was there, then he was gone. It was that bad.
This is the quality work that we have as backup for when we have
right here
issues with our folks. But I do want to say, hey, thank you very much for joining us, Ralph. I appreciate you deciding to come on and to have a chat, have a beer, and also rant and rave about a whole bunch of different sort of stuff. Yep. It's been great chatting with you, my friend.
Hey, great to see you. And thanks so much to everybody here and everybody online.
This is where we're supposed to have some audio background music happening, but it hasn't happened yet, so he'll get there eventually.
With the new words.
Yeah, so the words get used next week. I think he's got that sorted out, but I've also copied them down on a piece of paper. Hey, thank you so much. I want to shout out to the folks that are inside the chat room. Obviously, we have Frank Bouchereau has joined us. Frank Boucher, thank you so much. Genescu7, Wire Canuck, because he is running the stream and helping us out these days. I know that GoGo Gadget 360 was chatting in the room for a good chunk of time. Absablog and Lootly, TRP 8472 joined us. Still in the list, I can see Fairbrit is still there from the UK. We've got Kowski joining us, and Soren Fisker, Shadiest of Pandas. Vizio MVP, as always, thank you so much for joining. Hopefully you're feeling better, my friend. A whole bunch of bots that I don't know who they are. I already said another random IT guy. I already said Absablog and Lootly. Anyway, a whole bunch of folks. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. We'll be back in a fortnight time for another episode of the Patch and Switch Show. Thanks, Ralph.
Sure.